preview of the Board of Appeals, that meeting that is scheduled for, Thursday of this week at 2 o'clock. And then the second one is to walk through the development and tax abatement agreements as well. We have some extra visitors here tonight, so just as a reminder, this is a work session between the city council and staff. Typically, we hold these in a large conference room, but we knew that we were going to have some visitors, so we moved it in here. It's a time for the city council and staff to have discussions about the items, asking and answering questions. It is not a time for public comment, and we won't have any public comment tonight. But the public certainly can listen to the conversation and then be prepared to ask their questions or provide input at the city council meeting a week from tonight. There will be a public hearing a week from tonight on the tax abatement and development agreements. So the public can have their input at that public hearing, but we won't be taking public comment tonight. So, start with that. Alyssa, you want to just talk about Board of Appeals and positions?
Sure. I'll keep it short. So last work session, you guys had talked about the structure for the Board of Appeal meeting. And based on that, we went with the scheduling format. We posted that on our website, the public notice, and I think there was a post on Facebook. As of today, I haven't really received any phone calls or emails like I have in previous years. I don't have anybody scheduled in a time slot right now. I wouldn't say that necessarily gives any indication of the turnout for the meeting. But last year, just going off of last year, we did get a lot of correspondence before that meeting. So I did get 2 letters from individuals and suggested that both of them contact their assessor. I don't know the status of that, but I'll still plan on having like a sign-up sheet out in the lobby, the same way as we functioned in the past. My only follow-up question for you guys is if you want me to be in the room with you, helping in any way, or if you want me out in chambers, with the county, or anything else that you need for that meeting on Thursday.
Who needs to record the motions that we make at each?
So the county records that on a big spreadsheet, and I get that at the end.
We would vote that. You need to be present for that recording vote.
Not necessarily.
We have one meeting, and at the end of that, we come to a conclusion and we
Right.
propose and vote on it. You don't need to be present for that.
No, I'll get that list at the end. They send me a list basically like however many weeks later. Yeah, so if you do, I totally can be in there. If you do want me in there, I have, extra help out here then too.
I was just wondering if you need to be in there for that vote.
Yeah, no.
Do you prepare minutes of the meeting?
The county takes care of that.
Just the county?
Yeah, they give them to me, and then I send out the decision letters, usually by the end of May.
So again, starts at 2 o'clock,
Yeah,
which means we're telling you.
the first person,
1:45.
2 o'clock, yeah,
We want to just be ready. If someone shows up at 2 o'clock, we want to be ready, so we don't want to.
yeah.
Any other questions? Short and sweet. We weren't, a month ago, we weren't sure what kind of response we'd get. We had no idea what kind of evaluations were going to be going. My sense is that they haven't been increasing a lot. We won't see it in people, but a month ago, we weren't sure about that. So.
It could change within a week.
Between now and Thursday, it could change. Okay.
All right, thank you.
We're going to use the list if it doesn't meet the. Second on the list is a development and tax abatement agreement for the proposed data center, and I'm going to turn that presentation over to Chad.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you all know, we've been working with Harmony Group LLC Subsidiary of Google, who is evaluating potential data center technology campus in section 31 of the city. I want to make note that as we present on this and as you consider the tax abatement agreement and the development agreement, even if an affirmative vote were to be taken on this, Google still has many things that would be required of them as we move forward. Affirmative vote on this is not an approval of a project. It is not an approval of a special use permit. It is not an approval of the environmental review, commercial industrial development permit, plating. All of those things would still need to happen. And any affirmative vote or action on these agreements would be contingent upon getting all of the future approvals. So I just want to get that clear and make that point from the very top. The other thing I'd like to point out is that during the review of both of these agreements, we worked with 3 separate attorney firms to make sure that all of our T's were crossed and I's were dotted. We worked with Overton Law, who is the city attorney, and we worked with Freiberger, sitting next to me, as local abatement and bond attorney. And then we also contracted with DLA Piper out of Chicago, and they are a data center specialist firm. So they specialize in data center contracting and land use. So we wanted to make sure we were well represented at the table as we negotiated and debated the particulars of these agreements. So I'll run through the development agreement, tax abatement agreement. I'll call out some high-level bullet points from within the agreement, of course. If throughout this presentation or at the end of the presentation, you know that you've had these agreements now for some time, if you have questions about anything I do talk about or want to discuss anything I haven't discussed in the bulleted list, of course, feel free to ask. If I cannot answer them, I'm certain the attorneys here can. So, starting with the development agreement, the development agreement says that the project can be built in up to 4 phases. Right now, it's being contemplated that there will be 3 phases built, inclusive of 3 data center buildings. And so all of the tax abatement calculations, all of the tax abatement cash flows and forecasts are all built around 3 separate phases with 2-year spacing between them, and we'll get more into that. But to be clear, the agreement would allow for up to 4 phases, but it is currently being contemplated at 3 phases. The development agreement requires $130 million worth of water, sewer, and road improvements to be constructed at Google's sole cost. That $130 million value is if it were publicly financed. And all of that cost would be borne by Google up front at their own cost, and the city would not participate in the construction or the funding of that construction as it was built. Upon completion of the improvements, so once the water, sewer, and road improvements are built, those utilities and road improvements would be turned over to public ownership. So they were built into our specs, and then they would hand them over to us for ownership.
And Chad, just to clarify, that's entirely just like if we have a subdivision. The developer builds that subdivision, does all the infrastructure, and at the end of the project, they turn that over for our ownership.
Or Fleet Farm.
Or Fleet Farm or any other development that extends the water and sewer.
Thank you, Mr. Mulder. Another notable item is that the facility, by way of the development agreement, is contractually limited to no more than 50,000 gallons of water per day. There are some carve-out circumstances for fire flow. If there's a fire, of course, we want them to have the water to be able to put it out. But on operations, they are contractually obligated to use no more than 50,000 gallons a day. So those are the real key takeaways on the development agreement. The real meat and potatoes is in the tax abatement agreement. Jobs is in the tax abatement. The real meat and potatoes is in the tax abatement agreement. And to Mr. Whitland's point about the jobs, because I think being an economic development professional, I'm particularly interested in the job creation portion of these types of investments. But the abatement agreement would, if approved, would induce a minimum of $650 million in private investment. It would induce the creation of at least 40 high-quality employment positions within the city, located here in the city of Hermantown at the project site, with jobs paying more than $75,000 a year each. And those jobs would enhance and diversify the economic foundation of the city and of the region, being technology jobs, and the project would significantly increase the tax base. So when we think about the reasons that the legislature grants us to satisfy for tax abatement purposes, it checks several of the boxes outlined in the statute. Of note, the developer will absolutely pay 100% of all of the real estate taxes when they are due. It's what we do with those taxes once we receive them that get outlined in this agreement, but they will pay all of their taxes. The school district, of note, has declined to participate in this abatement in any way, shape, or form. So that means that even under our abatement agreement, the city would collect 100% of the taxes that is due from the development. They in no way would rebate, refund, or grant any kind of abatement from the school, so they will collect the full taxable amount from the developer and from the project. So what about the mechanics of the abatement? What does that look like? The city will collect, actually the county collects, and then the city does some math, and then what we'll do is we'll take the existing baseline taxes, so the taxes that exist currently today, and then we'll take an additional $100,000 off the top of the project. So you've got all, here, let me back up. The project creates a whole bunch of taxes. We'll collect all of those taxes. We'll retain the taxes that currently exist today, and then we'll retain $100,000. After those two things are retained, we would then do a calculation of 85 and 15%. We would rebate essentially 15 or 85% of the taxes after that, right, back to the developer, and we retain that 15%. And that's the basic mechanics. We keep the existing and 100,000. We then abate back 85% while retaining the 15%. The Eller's abatement forecast, again, run on those three phases, anticipate that aggregate amount would be $70 million. That said, within the abatement agreement, we put a hard cap of not to exceed $80 million. So we anticipate that under the valuation provided to us by St. Louis County on a price per square foot basis, we anticipate that they would produce about $70 million in available taxes, but we put in a hard cap of $80 million not to exceed.
Again, just to clarify, because we're walking through these bullet points here, but then you're going to go to a slide presentation.
Correct. Thank you, Mr.
The
Moore.
80 million is over the time period of the agreement.
Yeah, so each phase, the next bullet you'll see, each phase of the project would receive a 20-year abatement starting the year after it begins operation. So they construct one building and ancillary buildings, one data center building and ancillary buildings. A 20-year abatement would start after that project begins operation. They would then roll in and start constructing the second building. Once that building starts operation, the 20-year abatement would kick in. They then roll into the third building. After that's operating, the 20-year abatement would kick in. So with a 2-year gap, the anticipated timeline is about 28 years overall for all three phases. And that's what that $80 million cap would be, is for all three phases in aggregate, in total. Again, Ellers believes their forecast shows, their cash flow show that they'll create about $70 million, but we left a little wiggle room for it. And I will present more with some graphics because it's going to be easier to digest with graphics than it is just me spewing out numbers verbally. So, again, the abatement analysis and cash flows completed by Ellers, our financial consultant, assumed a 2-year gap between completion phases, anticipating a combined abatement term of 28 years for all three abatements. So the first phase on the job side, so we tied the jobs to the abatement in the abatement agreement. The first phase of the project would create 40 full-time jobs by the end of the third year that it was built. So we've got 40 on the first building, and then each sequential building would then have a minimum of 30 jobs that would be created. So 40 for the first, 30 for the second, 30 for the third, again, anticipating 3 phases for a total of 100 jobs. All of them being a minimum of more than $75,000 a year. Now, if they don't create those jobs, say after year 4, they've only created 20 out of the 40 full-time jobs that they promised in the first phase, we would then reduce the abatement that we would pay them proportionally. So if they create half the jobs, we would only give them half the abatement. So there's financial, let's call it a financial penalty. If they don't create, there's also financial, you could look at it as a financial incentive to create. And so it goes with the full 100. If they create 90, then they get 90% of the abatement allotted. And the final point is that the developer has agreed to make annual payments, financial considerations, to both the school district and to the city of Hermantown, in recognition and consideration of potential impacts and the commitments that we've made. Those payments would commence on the initial commercial operation date. So when the first phase gets built and they start operating, that's when those payments would kick in. Those payments look like this. The school district would begin at an $850,000 a year payment. Those payments would continue for 28 years, and every year following that $850,000, it would go up by an additional $50,000. So in the end, over the course of the 28-year term that's anticipated by these, the schedule that we worked on with others, those payments would be $42.7 million to the school district in total. Payments would be made to the city because this is an agreement between the city and the developer, and so those dollars have to flow through the city. But within the agreement, we state that we will set up a mechanism, a joint powers agreement with the school, and then we would just simply work as a pass-through. The school district would set up a fund, any kind of fund they choose. If it's a checking account, it can be a checking account. If it's something fancier, it can be something fancier. We simply take the money in and we deposit it into whatever account that they determine. And then the city's payments would begin at $150,000 a year and increase by $7,500 every year after. That term is only for 20 years, not for the 28 that the school gets. The resulting value for that one is 4.425, just shy of $4.5 million. Important to note that all of these payments are cash payments, and that they would be unrestricted. So the city and school, they can use those funds however they choose with no strings attached. Also of note that the payments to both the school and the city would survive a termination of these agreements. So they are obligated, the developer, Google, is obligated to continue to make the payments if they terminate the abatement agreement, if they only build one phase, if they only build half a building, if they only, whatever circumstance might be, and the agreements get terminated, those payments survive. And they're also binding to any future successors. So let's say Harmony Group LLC builds them, Google then creates another subsidiary and transfers the agreements over. Those payments would carry with, and they would be obligated to make those payments as well. So those are the major bullet points: the development agreement and the tax abatement agreement. I'm going to now kind of go through a slideshow real quick for you that staff has put together that kind of visually shows what these tax abatements and the payments look like and how they compare to each other. So, high level, what does the Hermantown taxpayer receive? They receive infrastructure that would be $130 million if we were to finance it ourselves. That's $130 million worth of utility extension and roadway improvements. As I presented at the last city council meeting, that utility extension has the potential to unlock hundreds of millions of dollars of economic impact beyond the data center and independent of the data center. School funding, $40 million to the school. Those are unrestricted payments over 28 years. And city funding, $4.5 million. Again, unrestricted payments over 20 years. That's what the taxpayer receives. What does Google pay for? The obligations of Google and what they will pay for. $130 million worth of utilities and infrastructure. $40 million to the school over 28 years. $4.5 million to the city unrestricted funds. Taxpayer receives it, Google pays for it. So what happens with Google's tax abatement? Again, they pay 100% of the property taxes, and these go to the school, the city, and the county. The tax abatement proposal is only the city's portion of the taxes. This does not abate the schools, and it does not consider, at this time, any abatement from the county. So the city again keeps $100,000 in annual property taxes, along with the baseline, which is about $28,000 a year. And the city then sends 85% of the remaining property taxes back to Google each year after they pay their property taxes until 2052, or until the payments receive a cap of $80 million. They pay 130, we slowly pay them back a portion of their 130 over time using the taxes that they've created from the project. After that point, the city will then receive 100% of the property taxes that Google pays from the property in the project. Of note, even after we abate 85% of the property taxes that this project will create, we retain that 15%. It will still be larger than a Walmart, the Fleet Farm, the Sam's Club, the Menards, and the Bass Pro Shop combined. So what happens with Google's tax abatement? If these abatements are approved, no residential or commercial taxes that are currently paid within the city of Hermantown or the county are returned to Google. No current commercial or residential tax monies paid are lost in this potential agreement. And the school and city payments, those financial considerations at 40 and at 4.5, as well as the infrastructure project will be paid by Google regardless of whether or not the abatement amount is generated. So let's say the county, their forecast, what they predicted, they don't actually assess it as much. Google only collects $50 million in tax abatement over the course of the abatement term. They're still obligated to pay the same amount of payments, and they've still built $130 million worth of infrastructure. On the flip side, if they produce $80 million, more than $80 million in taxes, we only abated $80 million, and we still get the payments and the infrastructure. So graphically, what does this look like? The annual city tax revenues for the project property. So there are 22 parcels down there that are within the proposed project area. Currently, the city collects $28,000 a year. The city portion of our taxes is $28,000 a year from those parcels. After the project, even after abatement, so on the 15% that we would retain, is just about $450,000 a year. Again, if you look at the graph, that's as much as Bass Pro, Sam's Club, Walmart, Menards, and Fleet Farm combined. Over the course of the entire abatement period, Eller's cash flows and their analysis state that at the 28 years, the city would collect $12 million worth of tax revenues just from that 15% that we would retain. Also, I'll just note, all of these calculations throughout this entire slide assume that the tax rate doesn't change. That's the industry standard and how abatement forecasts are run. So, we talk about $70 million being the forecasted amount, or $80 million being the hard cap. That future value of abatement is $70 million. That's future value. That's the money in 2052. Today's dollar, what we call net present value, those same dollars are worth $33,500,000. So effectively, we're getting $130 million utility project, and we're abating in today, that's in today's value, right? Today's value, the infrastructure is $130 million to build, inclusive of financing costs. In today's value, the abatement is worth $33.5 million. So if we go out the length of time to 2052, where we would hit that $70 million abatement forecast, that same project, inflated at the same rate, would then cost $360 million to construct. So if we're comparing apples to apples, it's a $130 million project for $33.5 million and $70 million for $360 million. So now the school. Let's not forget the school is not abating any money. They will collect 100% of their taxes. Taking the Ellers cash flow, again, assuming no tax rate implications from the project, over the course of the over the course of the abatement term to 2052, the taxes will steadily increase. Year one, the school will collect $340,000 in taxes every year.
This is additional tax.
This is additional tax. This is just created by the project, correct?
Assuming the same tax rate.
Assuming same tax rate. And after the full build, after all three phases that were modeled get built, the tax to the school would be just shy or just over $1 million. Again, assuming no change to the tax rate. Those steadily increase along with the 4% rate, same way we modeled everything else, ending with a final annual tax payment to the school at almost $2.3 million to the school in tax revenue created by this project. This also to note, this is just property taxes and does not include the cash payments that would happen on top of the property taxes.
Can I ask a question here, as long as that wraps up?
Certainly.
If the city's portion is, the 15% of the city portion is $450,000 per year, why is the school's full amount only $340,000?
It has to do with the tax rate. You'll see in the abatement runs when they come out. So the abatement runs that Ellers produces will be a part of the agenda packet for Monday's meeting. And you'll see we have a different tax calculation, the county has a different tax calculation, and the school has a different tax calculation. So those rates are all different, and so they generate different amount of revenue based on the tax rate.
Simple. When I look at my own tax bill, it looks like about the same goes to the city as the same goes to the school district. So that's what throwing me off here, to think that 15% of ours is still $450, but the full amount to the school is only $340.
Sure, and when Ellers is here on Monday, they'll be able to more clearly answer that. But I know on the model, on the Ellers runs, the county's got a higher tax rate than we do. We've got a higher tax rate than the school. So maybe it's, so Ellers would better be able to answer that, but I know that the tax rates are different, which would impact how much revenue is collected.
Okay, thank you.
So over the course of the payments, the payment schedule, that 28-year payment schedule, goes beyond the 2052 date that is anticipated for the abatements. If we put everything side by side, so in this graphic, what I've done is I've shown in red the developer abatements, along with these are just the financial consideration payments stacked on top of each other. So you've got gold is the city, gold is the school, and then the blue is the city stacked on top. You'll see in today's value, $33.5 million of abatement versus just a little shy of $20 million in today's value for the abatements. So then as they increase, you've got a total value of just over $47 million of payments to the school, to the city, versus $70 million of the abatement to the developer. And you'll see that you've got additional payments beyond the abatement period. This, in comparison with the next slide, you'll see if we add all of it together, the taxes and the payments, the city, the school taxes, and the city and the school payments, we outpace the abatement payments every single year. So the full financial picture for just the city and the school is above what we would pay in abatement to the developer, again, paying them back for the $130 million utility and roadway improvement that they did at the time. All of this to say, that last slide, you'll go back 1 second. You'll see that this graphic ends in 2048. That is not the full term of the abatement. This is when the abatements then start to roll off. So if you remember the abatements, we had a 20-year on the first building, 20-year on the second building, 20-year on the third building. Just as they ramped up, at the end of the abatements, they'll then ramp down. So this graphic shows when the final year when all 3 buildings are being abated. Once they start to ramp down, in 2052, the year of the final abatement payment will be $1.7 million. In combination between the payments and the property taxes, the city and the school would collect a combined $13.5 million. When the abatement concludes completely in 2053, the payments and the taxes combined for the school and the city would be 17.6 roughly million dollars, while we will receive 0 in abatement payments. And finally, once the school payments roll, the final year of the school payment in 2056, Google's at 0, and the school and city combined are at 19.6. So you'll see even just in those last 4 years, the payments to the city and the school, just in taxes alone, increased significantly. So hopefully those graphics provided a little bit of context and some visual representation, for visual learners, made it a little easier to comprehend. But that is the end of my formal presentation. I don't know if Mr. Mulder or Mr. Goodman have anything to add.
Well, there's always a couple things. It's like you present these things in such a way, it's like we talk about present value and future value. Now, it's similar to how much do you pay for your house? Well, I paid $298,000 for my house, but how much did I pay to the bank? I paid all that interest over time. So it's like they're going to spend $130 million in the next couple of years to build that pipe if approved. And that would be the equivalent of us paying $35 million. So they're paying a vast majority of that without being abated. The other thing to remember is how tax process works, is that both the city and the school don't set the rate independent of what the levy amount will be. So basically, the school district and the city will set a levy. And that levy then will affect the rate. People always say, well, I'll never use math when I get older. Well, here you are, you're using math today that you should have learned when you were in high school. Is that if you raise the levy and with your tax basis going, theoretically, the rate could go down. And so it's not to say that that will just be gravy money that for the city and the school district to accept. There'll be money they could use if they kept the rate the same. But they theoretically could say, we don't need that much money, we'll lower the rate. It's always, we say, this is how much additional revenue they'll have. But it's not quite that simple in so much as that they actually set the levy, which impacts their rate, which impacts exactly how much money they use.
So, Mayor Boucher, Council, happy to start back at the top on the development agreement. I know that you've all had some time to digest this. If you've got pre-written questions, or if you want to bounce around, if things that I said or Mr. Mulder said spark some questions in you, we'd be happy to respond to any of those at this time.
I had 3 pages of written here, so.
Why am I not surprised, Councilor Geisler?
I go first. Go ahead. So this is relative to both agreements. Can you and maybe this will be a question that we can ask of Google if they're here at the meeting, but can you help me understand the corporate structure and relationship between Harmony Group, Google, and Alphabet Incorporated?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, I'm not an expert on their own relationship. I know that within the agreements, Alphabet is listed as the parent company of all of them, and of Harmony Group. So Alphabet is named within the agreement as the parent company, and so anything within these agreements that states a parent guarantee, that would mean that Alphabet would be the parent that would be making that guarantee. As for where Harmony Group LLC falls into that, a Google representative and an employee of Google will be present at the May 4th meeting and will stand for your questions. So the thing I do know is that Alphabet is the parent.
The agreements are with Harmony. They will be the taxpayer, correct?
That is correct.
On the tax abatement document, Harmony is listed as the developer. In the developer agreement, Harmony is referred to as the company. Any reason why that is?
Mayor Boucher, Council, I don't know why we've distinguished differently between the two, but I would say the obligations remain the same regardless of the vernacular.
Yeah, it's in the very first paragraph of each tax abatement agreement. It's called the developer, and the other is called the company. So, no specific reason?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, no, obligations are the same regardless of company or developer.
You started with development agreement, if it's all right, we'll start with that. On page 1, it talks about it makes references to the special use permit. And I just question, can we, it says special use permit attached here too as Exhibit D. You had mentioned, you started the meeting saying there's many, many, many things to go yet. Can we do this agreement without that and then attach it at a later time?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, the attached version in the exhibit is actually the form. So the updated version online does have that. It's simply the application in the form. So it basically puts into the development agreement what the special use permit will look like, but they'll have to fill it out with the project details when they apply. So in the agreement, it just puts a placeholder in there that has what the template is, and then that'll carry forward. So yes, we can enter into an agreement contingent upon them successfully applying for and being granted their special use permit.
Okay. Same with all of the other things we talked about. There's reference to a master plan in here, and all of that's forthcoming. Do we know a time frame for that?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, not 100% dialed in on when. They're getting really close on final site design. I know that they would like to host some community meetings once they do have site design figured out. But we're anticipating Q4 of this year to bring those before council and the public for consideration.
You had mentioned paragraph 3.2 talks about water usage at 50,000 gallons for domestic type toilet flushing and things like that. That sounds fine with me. The one thing that I noted though, paragraph 4.19 talks about water and wastewater will evolve, including the possible need for industrial wastewater, or industrial water and wastewater. To me, that's kind of leaving things open-ended. Do we know what that might mean, or?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, it says that they may evolve and that we would be, that we are, the only contractual obligation we make in this, under that is our willingness to discuss it. We don't obligate ourselves in any way to accommodating that. It's simply putting in writing that the wastewater needs may change, and if they do, we'll discuss it at that time and make decisions then.
Okay. Let's see. Can you explain 3.4 cartway easement?
Yes, Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, there is currently a cartway easement. So cartway easement is for landlocked parcels where an easement can be granted to access your landlocked parcel. There is one of those in existence today. As with any good developer, they're looking to clean up any erroneous easements that might exist on the property. We are working through that right now. That process includes getting signatures from the surrounding property tax owners, property taxpayers that abut the easement. We will be going out and obtaining those signatures, or trying to obtain those signatures here in the near future. The agreement does say that the cartway easement, we will cooperate in that, but that it is required to follow the standard process for vacation easement. And we are not granting that cartway with this, we're simply identifying it and saying that we will cooperate in the process as we do with everyone else.
Just never heard the term cartway.
Yep.
3.6 stormwater. The developer will own the stormwater ponds, it sounds like. They'll be charged the normal ERU as every other developer is in town, correct? Will they qualify for that same deduction if they do the proper?
Yeah, so the stormwater ordinance requires they'll be assigned the same ERUs that anybody else. ERU is the equivalent residential unit. And they'll be eligible for a reduction, just like other commercial properties, if they mitigate both rate and the amount of stormwater that's produced.
And remind me whether it's that developer or the other ones we have, who's responsible for the reporting and the inspections of those stormwater ponds?
The city does have a regular inspection of those stormwater ponds.
Even though they're on private property, the city gets to go and do that?
Yes.
Okay. 9.9, this may be just a typo, or maybe I'm thinking it. Recording of memorandum, it says company may record a memorandum of this agreement. Shouldn't it be shall record? Aren't we requiring that?
We can make that change.
Okay. It just sounds better to me like we're requiring them to do that. Last question on the development agreement, Exhibit G, road improvements. It's kind of a small plan. Can you just explain? I think I understand what's happening at Midway and Morris Thomas. Looks like they're fixing up the intersection, and then they're going to put some turn lanes in for their own driveway. Is that correct?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, I missed the first half of that as I was taking.
The Exhibit G road improvements, if we could just talk what that all means, and that's part of the abated costs, right?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, yes, it's part of the abated costs. I will probably kick over to Mr. Wolf to talk about the improvements, as he's got those a little more down than I do.
So, yes, Mayor and Council, the roadway improvements are broken down into both St. Louis County improvements and MnDOT improvements. And those will start with the county. So the road access will come off of, the planned access right now is off of Morris Thomas. So the improvement would be on Morris Thomas, so approximately a half a mile from Midway west to the top of the hill near the entrance of the the substation today. Then there would be improvements on Midway Road, which include a new signal system there at the T intersection. There would be some signal upgrades at Highway 2. And then there would be signal communications with the railroad track. So if there's a train coming, it will talk to those other signal systems. There will be some improvements on Old Highway 2 where the water line will go. And then at the intersection of Highway 2 and St. Louis River Road, the traffic impact analysis shows that they need to put a left turn lane. So if you are westbound on Highway 2 coming out of Proctor, they're going to need to put a left turn lane to get onto St. Louis River Road. So those are the public roadway improvements that are not city improvements.
All right. That's all the questions I have on development. Some more on tax abatement. We talked about the public improvements of $130 million. This is my simple math here. $80 million maximum abated. Does that mean that the developer is paying for $50 million of improvements out of their pocket?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, so it's important to remember the $80 million is the future cap. So the cap of the cap on the value of money in the future. The net present today's value is not of the cap, but of the forecasted abatement is about 33.5. So if we're going to compare the $130 million in construction costs, we should really compare it to the $33.5 million of today's value, because the 130 is today's value. So that said, yes, everything above and beyond that $33.5 million that would, in today's value of abatement, that it would cost the developer, the company, Google, Alphabet, whoever we want to call them, where they build that pipe, anything above and beyond the abatement value, they're responsible for it. Also to note, they're responsible for all of it up front. That abatement is simply paying them back over time with the taxes that they create because they invested.
So if they built the pipe for 50 million, we only abate up to 50 million or 80%?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Dilly, no. If they build it for 50 million, I'd be blown away. But if they were to do that, they would still have the abated cap of 80 million future value, or 33.5 in that present.
Does the amount that we're capping on the abatement, 80 million, does that affect I don't know how the state looks at this from a standpoint of how much that we can abate or either TAF or TIF for a future development?
Yeah, Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, we are limited to abating 10% of our total tax base. So of all the taxes that the city collects, we can only abate by statute 10% of that total. Another cap that we've put in there that we didn't talk as much about, or I don't even think we mentioned, is we only allow them 70% of that 10%. So 7% of our total abatement value that we can do on an annual basis, they can't go over that 7%. So there are actually two hard caps. One is $80 million, and then also 7% of our total tax base in abatement. So we did that because we can't really, with any certainty whatsoever, predict what the taxes are going to be and what the abatement value is going to be. So let's say, for example, 19 years from now, their tax value is going to way up. We're abating 85% of that. We can't have that interfering with our 10% statute cap, right? So we put that 7% cap on it. So even if the 85% that we are supposed to abate back to them is higher than that 7%, they'll be capped at the 7%. So we were mindful of that statutory cap, and we wanted to protect, because that's how we pay for things, right? So that's how we pay for city infrastructure, it's how we pay for buildings, sometimes, that's how we pay for stuff, so we wanted to be protected with that.
My next question, maybe I should wait for next week to review that Eller's report, but appreciate knowing how you broke out the school and the city, and I asked a question about that. Do you know what the total anticipated taxes collected from the project will be? School, city, county?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, I have it. I don't have it at the ready. It's all in those abatement forecasts. Again, we're pretty focused on the school and the city tonight, but it is all in those cash flows.
I have some questions related to the transferring 3.02. It makes it rather specific that says you can't do it without the city approval, but then it goes on to say, well, if it's amongst your own, one of your companies, you can do it and let us know later, which I thought didn't seem quite right, but, so 3.02 A, B, and C, A says the developer shall not assign without written consent, and then it says somewhere, next paragraph, can assign by developer to an affiliate of the developer shall not require written consent of the city. However, the developer shall notify the city within 45 days. I mean, is that normal protocol? I mean, just to be able to, again, my bigger question is how do all these companies play in the sandbox together?
Yeah, Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, yes, it is standard. So take, for example, the Pillars. Once they were done with their construction financing and they went to permanent financing, they changed the name of the entity that owned it and got permanent financing from them. And so it is common. And the thinking on notice was if it's going to go outside of the Alphabet family, then we're going to care. How they manage their books and their entities, ultimately it all reports back up to Alphabet, so that was the thinking. But we still wanted to be notified when they did change, when and if they did change ownership within the family companies.
Yep. Perfect. 3.03 talked about the amount of money to the city, and that was, you already mentioned, that's like 4.425. 3.05 talks about the money to the school, and you said that ended up to be about 42 million over that time frame. 3.06 says, and then just wanted to clarify that if the taxes don't get paid, we are not obligated to pay the abatement, correct?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, that's correct. And I would also say if they don't meet their abatement goals, if they don't meet their employment goals, we're not obligated to pay abatement going forward either. So there are a couple of catches in there. If they're not paying for that or meeting the employment goals, abatement is off the table.
Is that per phase or is that total? So if they don't meet the employment goals of phase 2, do we not have to pay the abatement back for phase 1 and 2?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor LeBlanc, all phases, correct. So they are required, if they build a second phase, to create 30 jobs with that phase. And if they don't do that, they don't meet the employment goal.
But we're abating per phase right now.
I see. I think I understand the question. Yes. So correct. If they meet the 40 on the first phase and they hold those, then they do get the abatement on the first phase. If they have a first phase and a second phase, they meet the employment goal on the first phase, but not the second phase, then they don't get the abatement on the second phase, but they do on the first. Because they are separate abatements.
The next question was relative to 4.01, how we came up with this value of 33,515, 770, and after all the discussion, I get that, so thank you. Next is 4.01, it talks about my question here is St. Louis County. Explain what St. Louis County is doing for tax abatement on the project.
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, unknown at this time. They're still in discussions. They're still having negotiations. Really don't know where they're going to go or where they're going to land. The abatement agreement before council and being considered by council is for the city portion only because that's what we know. Unknown at this time.
It does say St. Louis County will also provide tax abatement.
Where do you see that, Councilman?
4.01, does it say that, the third paragraph from the last, third sentence in the last, third to the last.
I guess I don't know if a zero abatement is technically a tax increase.
I guess we could clean that out and the expectation is that the expectation the whole time has been that St. Louis County is going to be a participant and do a separate abatement on their end, but we can revise that language to, at this point in time, since we don't have the full details, to just reflect that there's an expectation, but not say that it's an absolute.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure our agreement can force the county board to take a certain action.
Correct.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
want that language to nullify this agreement.
That one may want to say may also provide instead of will. Okay, thank you. 4.04, minimum employment goal, we talked about that, but how will we know? Will we expect a report from them every year?
Mayor Shea, Councilor Geisler, that's correct. We will get a report every year. There are obligations and requirements within the agreement that talk about their participation in the process. And we will get a report. We will use that report to then calculate the abatements. And we also have to use it for our business subsidy reporting to the state as well.
We'll have to report that information to the state of Minnesota.
7.07 is a recordable memo with the county. Is that the same recordable memo that we talked about in the development agreement?
Mayor Shea, Councilor Geisler, yes, one and the same.
Chris, just a follow-up question, but sometimes what happens is that there's a memo of the document as opposed to the document.
That is correct. So the memos just get placed in the real estate record so that there's notice that there's an agreement that does exist out there without providing all the specific details. So with respect to the two agreements, there may be two separate memorandums that would get recorded. And most likely, I would say there would be two separate documents. And then with respect to the question earlier regarding why this company used for one agreement and the other used developer to define the same entity, both documents had different origination sources, different attorneys the form came from, so it's really just, it's not a material thing whether developer or company is used, it's just a stylistic preference.
Okay. Paragraph 7.09, I read it and reread it, but help me understand what that means.
If the agreement were to be terminated, it just goes on to say that the provision saying that city council members and people that authorize the various agreements on both sides would be held personally liable.
Okay. All right. Some of the other things I've already asked and heard. We talked about other approvals for the project, but the water sewer project is kind of separate from the project. Is that being, would that construction start before the actual site development?
Mayor Shea, Councilor Geisler, I expect they would start pretty closely. Yes, the construction of utilities and the roads are a separate project. They would need their own permits. They would need their own process. But I expect that they would. I would expect that the development, if it were to get through all the hurdles and it were to receive all the approvals, They would probably start some land clearing and mass grading before they started the construction of the utilities, but they'd be pretty close succession.
That was all my questions, and I meant to say this first, but thanks everybody for the work into this so far, and the fact that we're having this meeting to help us understand that this is a big thing, and I think having this opportunity to review it is awesome, so thank you.
So, John and council, I heard a couple of questions that both Mulder and Chad had responded to, and I just wanted to add a couple of things. One, your last question about the construction. Based on their traffic impact analysis, the thought right now is the improvements to Morris Thomas and Midway need to be completed before the construction can start on the site because of the construction traffic generation. So those improvements we expect to happen before any major items of work
Next summer, probably.
well, depending on the review and approval process. And then you asked a question earlier too about the stormwater and the inspection. So typically, the engineer of record would put together a maintenance schedule for the BMP or the best management practice that is on the site. And then typically they record their inspection logs and get those to the city on an annual basis. And then if there's a reason for us to visit the site, we have that in the agreement that we have the right of entry.
Great access to them. Yeah.
So Mayor Boucher was interested in asking a question or two.
Yes, you talked about 3 or 4 phases. Do you have any idea of the size, square footage area of each of those phases?
Mayor Boucher, they have not stated with 100% certainty what they're going to come forward with on the SUP and the CIDP. So I will preface everything that I'm saying on the fact that they have not totally dialed in their site plan. But right now being discussed is somewhere between 300 and 350,000 square feet for the data center buildings. Of course, there would be office that would come along with that. They're still debating on what other ancillary buildings might be required. But that's where they're at right now. But those won't be finalized until they actually have the application.
How long do they have to decide if they can do the 4th phase? Is it the likely abatement they can at any point decide to do the 4th phase?
Mayor Boucher, Councilman LeBlanc, they have, I will have to look. They can do up to 4 phases. They have to construct the phase within 5 years in order for it to qualify for any abatement. But I think that I will have to look. I will have that answer for you on Monday.
5 years from when?
From the execution date of the agreement.
So the 3rd phase has to start within 5 years?
I
Or
will.
4th phase, I suppose.
You want me to look right now?
One is fine.
Okay.
And then sorry, when you keep going. Who monitors the water? I mean, what is, when we say they're contractually limited to, does that mean at 50,000 gallons we shut the water off?
Mayor Boucher, Councilman LeBlanc, we monitor the water on all of our utility payers, so we have access to all of that. If they exceed 50,000 gallons a day in their operational use, they will be in breach of their contract. And so there's a cure period for that, there is a cure process for that, so if they are in breach of their contract, we would then have the ability to call them into breach and we would execute and start those cure period. It's not immediate, like, we put a sensor on it and the second they hit 50,000, we shut it all down. But they are, it's just like with any other contract, they're obligated to, and then we would engage in the cure in the default process.
And then, we talked that we were gonna collect the existing amount of tax plus 100,000. What is the existing amount? I mean, it's almost irrelevant in the size at this point, but
Mayor
I saw
Shea,
it on here, there's 28,000.
yep, 28,000 a year for the city portion of the payments.
For some reason, I had 82 in my head, which is close, but not exact.
82 might have been the full amount.
For, yeah. Or I got too many backwards in my head. Don't even give me too much credit. And then who tracks the total amount abated? Like, who keeps a running total of that? Is that the state? Is it the county? Is it us? I'm assuming there's only one party doing it.
Mayor Shea, Council LeBlanc, we work with others to do all of our abatement processing every year, so, or whoever the financial advisor, financial consultant would be at the time. So we work with them to do the abatement process, and then we do the cumulative, including in the reporting to the state. So
But even on the more practical, hands-on stuff, they pay their taxes to the county. The county then pays it to us. We then cut a check to them. So our finance department, and you would see the tax abatement report.
Like we see Fleet Farms.
You see Fleet Farm, and you also see the tip on the Holiday Inn.
I guess the only other thing I had, and this is more of a point of curiosity for me, do we know what the school's budget is currently?
I just looked this up.
I'm sure I could Google it.
What do you look it up? Yeah, we'll Google it.
Their budget is, school finance is super complicated, and they have different revenues. A lot of it comes from the state, the majority of what they do comes from the state. And then they have the residential tax levy, which I feel like the residential tax levy was somewhere around $10 million mark. I just looked this up. But that's coming from memory, from the levy itself.
So, do we flip back to the scale that had tax for, well, it wasn't year, but you want to go back to it. So year one, roughly, just going off of memory, the school's going to be 30% of the budget's going to come from this budget.
Assuming no tax rate implications.
And probably more than that if you can count that.
Yeah, plus the cash contribution.
30% anything is a lot.
The first year would be 3%.
30 would be, yeah, you're right, sorry.
Mayor Shea, did you
So I have to do math in real time.
have more questions?
I'm good.
And just to clarify, there will be no public financing for the pipe. That will all be done through the developer, paying for it themselves.
So Mayor Shea, Councilor Jelly, we will not participate in paying for the construction of the pipe.
Will not be bonding for it.
We will not be bonding for the construction. They will construct it fully on their dime. The only public financing, as it can be called, would be the abatement, whereby we would pay them an abatement payment using the taxes that they have created and paid from their project to pay them back over time for a portion of that pipe.
So if they
For
build,
those utilities and road improvements.
so if they do construct this pipe, it's all put in, and they hand it over to the city, and they say, you know what, we're not gonna build here, and you tell them you would have the pipe completely paid for, and would not be on the hook for the 130 million, whatever it would cost to construct it, correct?
Correct.
You have talked about tax abatement and TIF and those financing methods over the last couple of months. At the presentation that HEDA, we talked about it on different projects. I always say the word abatement is a terrible word because it's not that they're getting out of paying their taxes. They're paying their full share of taxes. But what abatement does is dedicates the taxes that they pay for a specific project. And so it's not like they're getting out of paying taxes, it's just that their taxes are being paid for a specific project,
A community beneficial
a
project.
community beneficial project.
It's not like when you build your own house, you're not gonna get it.
We could have paid the taxes on their house and put that just toward, the purchase of squad cars or, but we don't do that. It's like, unless we have a very specific project to work with. In this case, we're having $130 million worth of infrastructure done.
To that note, given, in line with the presentation I made last council, independent of this data center project, that utility extension has the potential to create hundreds of millions of dollars of economic impact across the region.
I just have one follow-up. What about, what can we expect to see in the packet? You said that we'll get the full Ehlers report. Obviously, the agreements will be in there. And then what do you anticipate for presentation at the public hearing? This seem similar to what we just did tonight?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geiser, I personally wasn't planning on it, but I do as I'm directed by my boss, so.
Well, a couple things. One is, there'll also be a cover memo that will explain some of these items. That's drafted, we don't put the final touches on that yet. But we'll go through a process prior to the public hearing, explaining the agreements.
Yeah, that's what I might
Yes.
point. Yeah, I mean, I would anticipate a lot of people at the public hearing, and I think we need to have that education so that everybody is fully aware of what we're talking about.
Like we normally would do a public hearing, is, before we open it up to the public, we'll have a presentation by staff that would say, this is what the city council is considering.
And then if we have specific questions of the developer, they'll be here to, we can
Yes.
ask.
Any other questions? You've got it, you've got the agreements, we sent those out on Thursday. Read through them again and again and again. And then we'll put them in the packet again on later this week, either on Wednesday or Thursday, when we can set out for you. And then we'll have the public hearing on Monday. Immediately following the public hearing, there'll be resolution whether you want to approve or not. I think we've got those done. Okay.
And what is the rationale of approving both of these things at this time before we have a special use permit and all of the other things in place?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Geisler, the thinking was that they are done. Typically you would do an environmental process first, you would do a special use permit, you would do those things, and as you work on these things in tandem, these are typically the most difficult things to negotiate when it comes to projects, particularly projects of scale. But the developer, Google and the city both voluntarily, as you know, restarted the AUAR process, we started the whole environmental review process all over again. And then the developer also pulled their special use permit and CIDP permit in response to community comment. And they are working to make accommodations on the site design based on those community comments. And so they've started those processes over. But the deal points and the abatement points are largely the same. And so we felt that bringing them forward now, since they were done, would give, it's just an opportunity to take an action on something that's already complete.
Having said that, we don't have anything else on the agenda. I would imagine we're going to have one at the end of June. There's actually 5 Mondays in June, so we'll do I think it's the 29th of June. And at this point, I don't know exactly what that agenda will be like. I would imagine we'll be discussing some preliminary budget Other than that, are there any other business?
That'd be June 22nd? Or 29th?
Probably the 29th, the last, we got to shoot the last Monday.
I do have one more question, that's all right. With the community benefit money to the schools, is that in line with what other communities have received approval? Do you have any comparisons on that?
Mayor Shea, Councilor Jelly, the only comparison we have in the state is the comparison down in Pine Island. Pine Island, their school district was, they voted in favor of an abatement agreement that included just shy of $25 million for their school district over the course of 28 years, similar timeline. Their abatement package, obviously, the project is very different. They have far, far, far less public utilities to extend and public improvements to make. They have, if I call from memory, about $16 million worth of public improvements. Their entire abatement package was somewhere in the ballpark of $30 million. So the metrics are different, but that's the benchmark we have.
Adjourn, and then be home in time here, 6 o'clock. Thank you.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, so I